How does the Denver Broncos announcement of Teddy Bridgewater as the week one starter affect the rest of the team? That and much, much more on today's episode of the Mailbag Show. But Victoria, that is the hot topic of the day. And that's what I want to start with. We've got Jimbo asking us, how does this affect the rest of the team?
Absolutely. We have dove into this question a couple times throughout the off season on the Mailbag Show. Now I know Dave will have a lot to say. I think what you referenced previously is that Teddy was good for Jerry Jeudy, so let's throw that out there first. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about that, but I was already moving Jeudy up my rankings little by little each week, just little spots, right? Because every time I'd see he did something good in practice or in the game, he looked fantastic. This is good for his stock. Maybe a slight adjustment to Courtland Sutton, not only just because of Teddy Bridgewater, but I mean, we've seen him kind of struggling here in the last few weeks, which is a little unsettling for what his ADP currently is. I think this is great for the running backs too. I think Drew Lock had a tendency to chuck it down the field, as we've seen before. Not that he's never dumped it off to the running backs, but Teddy's probably more likely to do so. And he just, in my opinion, elevates the entire offense in the sense that we know he's a good game manager, right? He can manage the game for them to win. They have a fantastic defense, as we know. I think they'll be even better this year than they have been in the last few years because of the unfortunate injuries they went through last year. So I think he elevates everyone on the team. Even Noah Fant, though, I don't know if you've been seeing, Dave, some reports on maybe an injury for Fant recently.
I saw something about that. It's not something that seems very serious, so I'm not worrying about it all that much. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I look at is just last year, what we saw Teddy Bridgewater do. Robbie Anderson finishes wide receiver 19. DJ Moore finishes wide receiver 24, and Curtis Samuel finishes wide receiver 25. And then Mike Davis was a borderline RB1 for the majority of the season. So we know that Teddy Bridgewater can support this, and this is a team with a lot of playmakers on there. So I don't know if I'm necessarily crazy about reaching out and trying to get Teddy Bridgewater in leagues, but I do think that this is great for the rest of the people on the team. You already mentioned it, and I'll say the same thing. I do think that this is a slight knock to Courtland Sutton. I think that Courtland Sutton would have just, absolutely feasted with Drew Lock and his penchant for just chucking up those YOLO balls down the field and letting Courtland Sutton do his thing and make contested catches. But Jerry Jeudy absolutely goes through the moon with this news. We've already seen it in camp that they are developing a really nice rapport. Jerry Jeudy, he kind of relies on those timing routes and those short underneath patterns, and that's where Teddy Bridgewater is going to thrive as an accurate passer. So I love this for Jerry Jeudy. Fant and Sutton, you can kind of get a little bit worried, but Jerry Jeudy, this is big news for him. I want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show. Just a reminder that you can send in any questions you have to mailbag@footballguys.com in the top right of your screen right here. We'll start off by answering submitting questions, but please drop your questions live in the comments, and at the end of the show, Victoria and I will get to all of those. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube at youtube.com/footballguystv, where you can see this, the Audible, the Power Grid, and every other show that the Football Guys team has to offer.
And be sure to download the Football Guys mobile app today if you haven't already. I hope you have. It can be used on all smartphones, gives you all of the same tools that you'd find on the Football Guys website. In addition, our Draft Dominator app, it is awesome. It'll make sure that you have an edge above your teammates by getting this Dominator app, customizing the advice specific to your team, and download today so Football Guys can help you win.
And that's what we do here at Football Guys. We help people win their fantasy leagues, bragging rights, money, trophies, whatever it is, we're going to help you win it. But we have a ton of questions today, so let's go ahead and dive right in. And we got Joel Sigrist, who is a great friend of the show, always sending in questions. Thank you, Joel. And he's saying, what parts of preseason matter to pay attention to? There's a lot of data, and some of it won't have any relevance a month from now. How do you decide what to focus on? Victoria, how do you decide?
I love this question. Thank you, Joel, for sending this in. I think that obviously we cannot put all of our weight on only preseason box scores or storylines, right? But I think we can look at both of those things combined with the off-season reports. So the preseason utilization and off-season reports. So For example, Antonio Gibson, right? I have to try not to be biased because he looked fantastic in his preseason games, right? But I can't ignore that he hasn't been used on third downs. J.D. McKissick and company are still coming in on third downs. I can't be a biased fan there. But they've given him 16 touches on his 21 snaps, and he's getting targeted. And those are the kinds of things we were looking for in this offseason to see if he's going to up his targets. That looks good, right? Similar with somebody like Corey Davis, right? They signed him in free agency, paid that man, right? So we're just waiting to see, should he be the wide receiver one there? And preseason, Wilson is hyper targeting this guy. So, I mean, you kind of have to take, in my opinion, both can't go all in on preseason, but kind of combine the offseason news and who they're banging the drum for with the preseason.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. You hit everything. The way this question is phrased when it says there's lots of data and some of it won't come to relevance, I think the only data that you really want to look at are the snap counts with the starters that you alluded to. We see Philip Lindsay getting the lion's share of the early down work in Houston. That probably is going to translate to the regular season. Similarly to the J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson scenario that you were talking about, it looks like David Johnson is the third down back now in Houston, and that's something that we should pay attention to. So as far as data points, I don't think that there's a ton that you can really pull from there. But what you can see is how rookies get up to NFL speed. And that isn't so much data as it is just the eye test and watching that film. But like you talked about Corey Davis, I'll talk about the same team. Zach Wilson was a guy that I had a lot of doubts about. And then he came out slinging the rock and looked like the real deal. And that instantly, I don't want to overreact to preseason, but my biggest fear was that he was going to struggle against NFL level talent, and he immediately squashed those concerns. So not necessarily a data point, but seeing how these guys get up to NFL speed. Ramondre Stevenson was another guy that people said probably would struggle, given his size at the NFL, but he has looked great. And granted, it's been against third team defenses, but then you also see the transaction of cutting Sony Michel. It looks like he may have earned some sort of role for himself. So I think that preseason is more for the eye test than anything else, but there are some things that you could pay attention to, like snap counts, that do have some importance.
Absolutely.
So we got another question here from Pengs Picks FF, and he's saying, what team do you all believe will have the lowest fantasy points in total out of all the skill positions? Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, running back, and tight end. This is a fun question. I don't know how much it really helps, like when you're drafting, but it's a fun question to talk about. What do you think, Victoria?
It is, and I want to lead this off with it. You can't go into your fantasy drafts with just this thing in mind of I will only draft players on good offenses, right? That is some advice that's take it with a grain of salt, because you can have a player like James Robinson. Hey, what's up, buddy? Back into fantasy relevance this week. Last year, undrafted free agent, finished as RB7 overall with the Jags. They were horrible offensively, but he got a lion's share of rushing carry. So I want to preface it with that. This question is tough. I mean, the easy teams are going to go for Houston, right? I mean, I don't know what they were trying to do, signing all these geriatric running backs. And I mean, no harm to these fantastic, talented NFL players, but that backfield is a mess. Philip Lindsay looks like he'll come out on top. David Johnson, goodness gracious. You just think back, Dave, like a few years ago, David Johnson was incredible. It is
the unanimous 101. Like he was Christian McCaffrey, where it was like, if you're taking anybody besides David Montgomery or David Johnson, you're a fool. That's where he was a few years ago. Just
crazy. But even the quarterback situation, Tyrod Taylor, David Mills, I mean, Brandon Cooks is the only relevant wide receiver for me on that team. Maybe Nico Collins, rookie, can make a splash for himself, but that's going to be a putrid offense. I'll take the easy answer and go with Houston here.
So you stole my answer, and I'm not going to keep beating it. Yeah, obviously, I think Houston, like you're looking at Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins. You're looking at Philip Lindsay, who's probably going to lead the team. And then who's their tight end now? Jordan Akins, Brevin Jordan. I don't know who it is, but it doesn't matter as far as fantasy purposes go. But like you said, people, I feel like it's one of those older theories that people use in fantasy football. Like you want to get good players on good teams. And yeah, those guys are going to pay off for you. But there is gold to be found on garbage teams. And the guy I wanted to talk about was James Robinson, but you already did. Victoria,
Sorry.
you nailed that answer. I got nothing else to add. So let's move on to the next one from Joey Wright. And he said, it seems like the Bengals and Steelers have two of the most confusing and conflicted wide receiver groups. Which of these two groups do you feel most confident in knowing who the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 will be? Between those two, who are you thinking that you figured out?
Dave, I don't want to take your answer again. So I want to hear from you first. Let's start with you.
All right, let's go ahead. This is a great question, and I would say that I'm going to lean a little bit more towards the Steelers, feeling like I have that figured out a little bit. But you hit the nail on the head, man. It is confusing and it is conflicting, and it's a shot in the dark. And I just talked about this the other day on Twitter that Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Juju Smith-Schuster are all going top 30, and I don't think that all of those guys are going to finish top 30. So I think what this is this kind of phenomenon where everybody thinks that they know how the Steelers are going to work out. And everybody's like, these two guys are the guys you want, and this guy's going to be the odd man out. And everybody feels it differently. So everybody's kind of getting drafted closer to their ceiling than they are to their floor. But me being, overly confident and not really knowing what I'm talking about in this situation, I'm going to say that I feel like I have the Steelers figured out. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the odd man out. I think Deontay Johnson takes on that, dare I say, Antonio Brown-esque role out of the slot where he's just going to be a target hog. I think that you can slot him in for 160, 170 targets this year if he stays healthy. And then Chase Claypool is just a dog. I mean, that man can score from anywhere on the field. We're going to see double-digit touchdowns from him again. So I feel like Juju is just kind of by default the odd man out there. And then with the Bengals, I have no idea. Like T. Higgins could be the odd man out. Tyler Boyd could be the odd man out. What we've seen from Jamar Chase, he could be the odd man out. I mean, I don't know what to do with the Bengals, so I'm feeling a bit more confident in the Steelers. What about you? Oh, you are muted. Can you unmute?
Apologies. Yes,
Good.
I have to agree here with you, Dave. You hit a bunch of the points that I would make. I'm going to add a few here. Just the way Big Ben hyper targets Deontay Johnson. I'm not worried about Deontay. I love him as a 4th or 5th round pick with top 10 upside. I think with Juju, Deontay, Claypool all being there as well last year already with Big Ben, it's just a little less possibility of anything changing drastically outside of, adding Najee Harris, of course. Where with the Bengals, Joe Burrow scares me. I've said this, I think, for a couple of months now that he's not going to be 100% when he starts. So the ceiling, I feel like, for all those pass catchers as well is just a little bit lower, and it really depends on Burrow, and I'm very wary in that situation. I think Higgins can still carve out that role to be okay or safe because he's that red zone target. He's that big-bodied wide receiver on their team, and Boyd will likely just still get targeted in the slot. But it seems to me like, I don't want to say this is as bad as a Brady-led offense, but that ball went all over the field for when Brady was on the Patriots, and I don't want to guess who it might be each week. We'll see how the patterns begin in the season, but Steelers for sure are easier.
Yeah, and we could be totally wrong. Like Juju Smith-Schuster was the wide receiver 1 on that team last year from a fantasy point standpoint, or fantasy points, standing, and it could happen again this year. So we act confident and we act like we know, but thank God we're only we're 2 weeks away from football, and we'll start figuring it out soon enough. But that question is a great segue into our next question from David Pilling here, and he's saying, Jamar Chase, should we be concerned about his camp and preseason? For anybody unaware that doesn't watch preseason football, this man has a case of the dropsies. I mean, he cannot catch anything coming his way. So, Victoria, are you concerned?
A little bit. I want to preface that with the fact that obviously Burrow was not on the field when Chase was catching these rather less than stellar passes, right? He still was not catching them, so that is worrisome. Reports came out of camp that he had a fantastic practice the next day or two, which is fine, but I'm more worried about, I don't know if you caught this, there's been some off the field potential issues. Won't get into it, but it's something that could lead to legal issues or things of that nature. Maybe you guys want to research on your own. Nothing large has come to light or in the press recently, but that is a little worrisome to me more than these drops in preseason, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a Bengals fan, I'd be a little bit nervous about this situation right now. I mean, Jamar Chase What he's supposed to do is catch contested passes and, those balls that aren't perfectly thrown. He's supposed to come down with them, and he has been unable to do that. So I think this opens the door for T. Higgins to really just cement his role as this team's alpha wide receiver a little bit deeper. The one thing I'd say that you shouldn't freak out about, though, if you're looking for the other side of this argument, is that we have to remember that Ja'Marr Chase took last year off. I mean, this man hasn't played football since 2019, so hopefully he can kind of get back into it. It seems more like a mental problem than it does like a physical problem. I mean, we saw this man dominate in college, so hopefully the coaching staff can handle this the right way, and he can just sit in front of the jugs machine for 6 hours a day until he can start pulling these balls in again, because I am starting to get a little bit concerned, but not enough that I'm like pushing him down my draft board. I'm at the point now where his ADP is falling into the 6th round, and I'm drafting him at that spot because I think that could be a great value if he ends up getting close to his ceiling.
That's so true, though, because I think he was going as wide receiver 23 on Underdog recently, which is way too rich for me. But if this kind of adjusts him back to an okay spot, I'm all in on taking him.
So I'm at over 200 drafts now in Underdog, and I know it's a problem. But up until about 2 weeks ago, I had 0% exposure on Ja'Marr Chase because he was going in the 4th round. Oh, yeah. And just in the last week, I've drafted him about 15 times because when he's sitting there in the 6th round, it's like, great, he's finally affordable enough that I can take him. So I've finally upped my exposure on Ja'Marr Chase a little bit due to this dip. We got another question here from somebody on Twitter, and he is saying, he or she, what are some of your tiebreakers when looking at players in a similar zone or tier? So I don't know how you want to take this question, running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, but what are your tiebreakers when looking at guys in the same tier?
I think that's a good point. I think I would have to parse out position-wise. I think in general, what is the player's overall potential ceiling that you have decided on, or myself potentially, right? Am I looking at Nick Chubb's ceiling not being as high in my mind as a guy like Austin Eckler because it's PPR, and I think Eckler has much more upside? I'm not comparing the talent, it's fantasy, of course. Or does Chubb have less upside than, dare I say, Joe Mixon? Don't say anything, Dave. I know you love Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I'm going to be clipping this and sharing it as a promo tomorrow. Don't worry.
I'm lying through my teeth. No, I'm just kidding. So overall potential ceiling is something I look at not only in the first rounds, but obviously you're looking for that ceiling when you get into your later rounds in the draft as well. As far as position-wise, running backs, I'm looking for pass catchers. I'm looking for someone with clear, sustained volume and if they are on a good offense, it does give me a little more confidence. I don't want to put all my stock into a good offense, a running back on a good offense like we just mentioned, but that does give me a little more confidence. And then obviously, like before, does this player have a shot at carving out a significant role? For example, Marquez Callaway just going to bop to the 4th or 5th round of ADP after that crazy preseason game with Jameis Winston catching 2 touchdowns. Does he have a shot at carving out a significant role as the wide receiver 1 for the Saints? Absolutely. And he's going much later. So he's going to probably be a guy I'm taking in that tier in those later rounds over guys that maybe are the wide receiver 2 or 3 on their team, and they can't be relevant until there's an injury or something of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, I love this question, and there's so many ways that you can go. I feel like we could do a full hour show on this question, like how you do it in the early rounds, the mid rounds, the late rounds, how you do it position by position. So the 2 things that I'll kind of focus on, late round running backs, I feel like that's where the guys really get muddled together and you don't know. And like you said, the guy that can carve out a big and significant role for himself, that's absolutely what I'm looking for. So, I'd rather take somebody like Alexander Madison over somebody like James White, because we know what James White's going to do. He's going to be, a solid flex play week in and week out, and he's going to get his receptions, and he's going to give you 7 to 10 points, and that's what you're getting from James White. But there is no scenario where James White is ever going to be a 25-point-a-week guy. Alexander Madison, on the flip side, has no floor. I mean, he's going to put up 2 to 3 points a week while Dalvin Cook is Henry. But if something happens to Dalvin Cook, you've got yourself a potential RB1. So same thing, I'm taking Tony Pollard ahead of Giovanni Bernard. Just, these types of scenarios. I want the guy that is going to have a higher ceiling. And then also kind of in the same vein, I was kind of thinking about mid-round wide receivers because I feel like that's a lot of the time where I'm looking at these guys and I'm trying to debate between two. And there's one that I keep struggling with, and I finally planted my flag yesterday, and that's Brandon Cooks and Darnell Mooney. Now, I love Darnell Mooney. I think that he's a more talented player. I think the Bears are going to have a better offense than the Houston Texans. But at the end of the day, there is a 0% chance that Darnell Mooney is that team's wide receiver one. Brandon Cooks has all of the tools necessary to be the wide receiver one on the Texans. So even if Darnell Mooney hits his ceiling is going to be nowhere near the ceiling that Brandon Cooks has because Darnell Mooney can't find a path to 140, 150 targets. So I agree with you. And really, that was a really long way to say, yeah, you want to chase the upside is kind of what I'm going for when I'm torn between a couple players. We got another question here from Brian Fisher, and he's saying thoughts on Kamara and his value based on the starting quarterback. I took him at pick 6 when Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce were off the board. What do you think about that, taking Alvin Kamara at number 6?
Hats off to this pick. How is he still there at pick 6? Please, that was a fantastic pick, first of all. I believe, Dave, you and Troy, I think I was absent from this episode, but you and Troy talked about the value for Kamara, where you should be taking him in drafts, etc. I think that was a few episodes back, Brian, if you'd like to check that out. But I think that he has a potential for another nuclear season with how things are shaking out. I recently just moved him to my RB2 right behind CMC. I know that sounds crazy, right? But it's kind of like you're between him, Dalvin Cook, and CMC. I mean, it's kind of, you pick your poison, right? But he's the most the most talented pass catcher currently healthy on their roster. You will see a huge workload. And if our boy Jameis Winston is the starter, let's go, please. Fantasy is so much more fun with Jameis at the helm. I think that is much better for Kamara, his overall workload, his ceiling, even his floor. When Taysom Hill was in the small sample size, when Taysom Hill was the quarterback last year, he didn't target Kamara very much at all. I think he was getting about 8 or 9 targets per game with Drew Brees and barely a thing with Taysom Hill. So I like how things are shaking out for Kamara this year.
Well, what I would like to point out about that target share, he certainly was averaging less per game, but he was seeing an upward trajectory while he was playing with Taysom Hill. And in the last game that they played together, he actually did see 11 targets. So I think they realized, we need to get the ball in Alvin Kamara's hands. But
yeah.
Remember last year, like everybody was trying to find reasons to fade Alvin Kamara, like, oh, he's not happy in New Orleans and now he got a shot in his back. And everybody was pushing this guy and died. Like, why did we try to fade him last year?
Was it because was he injured in 2019? Is that maybe why it was something where we were just recency bias was getting us to be like, come on.
He still finished top 10 in 2019. And then people started pushing him down draft boards. And as we all know, he finished as the QB or the wide receiver, the running back one last year. And including that, he also had a 6 touchdown game in the fantasy playoffs. Like this man single-handedly won a lot of people a lot of money last year.
Sir.
And now it's, Taysom Hill might steal some red zone touches from him, or Jameis Winston might throw the ball down the field. I don't care. Alvin Kamara is the best player on that offense. He is arguably the best running back in the NFL. I mean, he doesn't have the size and speed that really gets a lot of people excited, but his elusiveness, his strength, his balance, I love Alvin Kamara, finding no reason to fade him whatsoever. I think he should be a top 3 pick. And if you got him at 6, congratulations, because once again, people are trying to push him down draft boards. And once again, he's going to feast. And I think he's basically a lock to finish in the top 3. Got another question here from David Pilling, who sent us a few this week, and this one is, everyone is guilty of us at times for making homer picks, but which player from your team is the guy you reach for a little bit every single time? Let's make this one quick, because anybody that's watched the show knows who ours are. Who is your guy that you're reaching for on the Bills?
I was going to go with Gabe Davis, but I'm going to go with Josh Allen because I love... Do I need any other reason besides the fact that he's daddy? Like, he's daddy, guys. And I will probably reach for him in too many drafts this year because I'm just going to want him on my team to root for him. Probably not going to get him in any of my Buffalo draft leagues, but we'll see. What about you, Dave?
Justin Fields. I mean, come on. How can you not? Like, I want every reason to root for this guy, so I want him to be on my team too, so I can root for him. What we've seen so far in the preseason has just been electric football. So I get it. He might miss the first couple of weeks, but he's a guy that I'm usually okay taking like a round or two early, just because at the end of the day, fantasy football is supposed to be fun. And if you've got an electric rookie quarterback on your home team that is putting up consistent QB1 numbers, what's more fun than that? All right.
If you take anything from this podcast today, just remember what Dave just said. This is supposed to be fun, guys. Pick the guys that you like and that you love, and then hopefully everything will follow.
Exactly. I love it. We got a question here from Mark K, and he's saying, assuming a 2 running back strategy to start, where would you head with picks 3 and 4? And we're also assuming that all of the top 3 tight ends are gone. So what are you doing with picks 3 and 4?
The top 3 tight ends are gone. I'm likely waiting until at the earliest the 10th or 11th round to take a tight end. If I'm high on guys like Higbee. If he's there, I'd maybe take him, or I'm just waiting even longer than that. In these next 2 picks and maybe 2, 3, 4 picks, I'm just hammering wide receivers. This is a sweet spot to hammer wide receivers. Dave, I don't know if you have a different answer than that, but
no, I feel like that's the best way to start your draft this year. Running back, and then wide receiver, like just hammer wide receivers in the mid rounds, because there are so many of them. And they're guys that we talk about a lot on this show. But Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, who we talked about to open the show, Deontay Johnson is still going in the 5th round somehow. Like, make it make sense. I can't figure out why. There are just, I feel like that's what you got to do in rounds 3 and 4. I think 5th round is usually where I'll start eyeballing quarterbacks. Like if a quarterback goes off the board in round 4, which is usually when you'll see Mahomes go, then I'll kind of keep an eye on it. I don't like, reaching for a quarterback, but I do like to get one of those top guys. So if you're in a league where like Mahomes goes in the 1st or 2nd round for some reason and it starts a little quarterback run, I might be willing to take Lamar Jackson or Dak Prescott or Josh Allen or Kyler Murray in the 3rd round if there's a quarterback run. But if everyone else is doing what they're supposed to and waiting on quarterbacks, you just keep hammering wide receivers in these rounds.
Just wait for Ryan Tannehill. It's okay.
Ryan Tannehill, Jalen Hurts. There are some guys that have very high upsides later on in the draft, but I don't know. I really love getting one of those top 5s this
year. Dave doesn't want to look at his roster and see Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill right at the top. It's gonna hurt his heart. I get it.
So I looked through yesterday at all of my Best Ball Mania drafts, which are the more high stakes. Nothing crazy, but it's $25 buy-in, and I've been in 10 of those so far. And Ryan Tannehill is on 8 of those 10 rosters. Wow. There's something about when there's money on the line. I'm just like, give me Ryan Tannehill in the 9th round. I can't get enough of it. But let's move on to the next one. And I hate the way this question's worded. 2QB Fantasy is asking, simple, who is the Jets starting quarterback? That is not a simple question. We don't know, but Victoria, give us your best bet.
Oh, goodness. I don't like this question at all. Let's just start with the preseason snap counts. We saw Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson, running backs for the Jets, play an almost identical amount of snaps with the first team last week. Michael Carter, surprise to us all, likely fantasy analyst. He didn't even play when Zach Wilson QB was on the field. So that's a little worrisome. I know we're all banging the drum for Michael Carter. Hopefully he could be a value this year, but we can't forget he was a day 3 NFL draft pick. So it doesn't look like he's carving out the top dog running back role quite yet. I hate this question. I think I would lean Ty as a dark horse. I just don't believe in Tevin Coleman as much as that would be the easy answer because of head coach Robert Saleh, and he's got familiarity with the coaching tree and all of that. Fine, he'll probably get that start, but I don't believe in Tevin Coleman at all. I'd rather take a shot on Ty Johnson in the later rounds of your draft.
Yeah, we hear about the running back dead zone a lot, which is like selecting running backs in rounds 4 through 6, but the real running back dead zone is on the New York Jets sideline. I don't think that any of these guys are going to be fantasy relevant. I think it's going to be a frustrating committee. Like you said, Robert Saleh, he comes from the Shanahan coaching tree where they love their committees. Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, loves his committees as well. We remember what a pain in the butt Jamal Williams was for Aaron Jones rosters over the last few years. So, like, if I had to pick somebody, I'm with you. Ty Johnson is probably the guy. He saw the majority of the work there, and he's young. But Tevin Coleman is a very capable running back and a fantastic pass protector, and has familiarity with Robert Saleh from his time in San Francisco. And then, like we said, Michael Carter is going to have a role for himself too. So, you know what? I was impressed with Zach Wilson. I was impressed with Corey Davis, but this backfield isn't something that I am really into this season. We got a question here from Matthew Bingham. How does tight end premium scoring, which is where you get 1.5 points per reception as opposed to the normal 1 point per reception, how does that alter your approach when drafting that position? Do you want me to start with this one? I got it. I got it. And I'm going to steal one from a Footballguys staffer here, Jeff Bell, who says that tight end premium scoring only benefits premium elite tight ends. And it makes sense. If you're a tight end that's getting 3 catches with the occasional touchdown here and there, that's really not going to make much of a difference. But when you've got the Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, it's tough for me to say it, but those are the guys that are going to see the targets, and those guys are difference makers in tight end premium leagues. And when you look at a guy that's getting, an extra or 8 catches a game, that's an extra 4 points a week, and that adds up big time. So I think that what this does is it takes the top 2 tiers of guys that are going to be highly targeted and pushes them up a little bit.
Yes.
But then what it also does is people see those guys go early, and then they freak out, and they're like, oh no, I need to get my guy. And then they draft Jared Cook in the 6th round. Don't fall victim to that. You want to get the premium guys very early, 1st and 2nd round. And if you don't get one of those top 2 tiers, just wait. What do you have to add to this one?
Absolutely nothing. You had a great answer, Dave.
On to the next one. Matthew Bingham is asking us, if Trey Lance and Justin Fields were announced as the week 1 starters, where would they move to in your quarterback rankings? And we're just going to assume 4 points per passing touchdown, which benefits those Konami code guys just a little bit. Where would you move them to if we get 17 weeks out of these guys?
This is hard. I think with these guys both being rushing quarterbacks, having that rushing upside, I might have a hard time not moving them into my top 20, and that's a little rich probably. I realize I'd have to bring up my list here, but rushing upside is just massive for your quarterbacks. I'd obviously have Fields, and so would Dave, would have Fields higher than Lance here. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to take a look here, Dave, if you want to answer. I'm going to take a look at my rankings. I might do top 20 if that was the case.
I've already got both of these guys as top 20 quarterbacks. I've got them at 19 and 20 right now.
Oh, shoot.
Because I think that we are going to see a change of guard within the first few weeks of the season. And I think that both of these guys are going to have QB1 potential. I mean, when you look at the other guys that are getting drafted here, it's just, I want these guys. We've already seen it. Justin Fields is averaging 8.8 yards per carry right now. He is able to find those creases and just take off whenever he needs the ball. He's going to be a force near the red zone where he's going to be running the ball as well. So when you look at those like back end QB1s, you're looking at Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. It's kind of easy to make a case to put Justin Fields and Trey Lance ahead of those guys. So I think that looking at my current rankings, if they are announced the week 1 starters, I will have Justin Fields at QB 12 and Trey Lance at QB 13.
Oh my goodness. That is probably the highest in all analysts, in the analyst world. That would probably be the highest. Wow. That is ballsy, I will say.
But really, are you taking Joe Burrow ahead of him? Are you taking Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford? Do you want those guys ahead of the ceiling that you're going to get from Justin Fields or Trey Lance? I mean, these are guys that realistically could run for 600 or 700 yards.
No, that's true.
I mean, that alone is equivalent to, basically half of what Matt Stafford is going to rack up through the air.
I feel like I could make a slight, potentially, now that you're kind of talking me into it here, I could potentially make an argument for having Stafford maybe higher just because of the running back situation there, and he's just going to have to toss the ball the entire time this season. So, but dang, you're making a good argument.
Yeah, I mean these rookies, we see it all the time where rookies come out and people are really trepidatious and don't want to draft them, and then they end up being like that cheat code that you get late in the draft that is a lock and
Justin
load
Herbert.
QB1. Justin
Yep.
Herbert last year, Lamar Jackson 2 years ago, Patrick Mahomes the year before, and Trey Lance and Justin Fields fit those profiles pretty well. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got some keeper questions, trade questions, and we got about 5 minutes left to run through these before we go to the chat. So we're going to go kind of rapid fire through these and try to get some quick answers, but keep dropping questions in the chat and we will get to those in just about 5 minutes. First question we got here is from Bradley Turns, and he's saying keeper, 10-man, non-PPR, Lamar in the 11th or AJ Brown in the 5th.
I'm assuming this is one QB.
Yeah.
AJ Brown easily here for me.
Yeah, I'm going to AJ Brown as well. Don't have too much to add to it. I think this one is a little bit of a no-brainer. So congratulations on getting yourself a wide receiver 1 in round 5. Got a question here from Tom Kelly. Trade offer. Dalvin Cook for Tyreek Hill and Etienne or Dylan. So we've got a choice. So we've got Dalvin Cook and Tyreek Hill, and then Etienne or Dylan. I think we know who we're leaning to here. But what are you doing that? Dalvin Cook for Tyreek Hill or AJ Dillon? We'll just take Etienne off the menu.
I might. I don't think I'd do it for Dylan. I think I'd need a different asset. I might have done it for Travis Etienne. Obviously, suffered a season-ending injury yesterday, unfortunately, which is terrible, terrible news. And I hope, Tom, you didn't make this trade yet before that. I think I would want more than Dylan, and I don't know if this particular fantasy manager would want to give you anyone else. I might not. I'm still in on Cook for this season.
Yeah, I'm staying with Cook. I like AJ Dillon, and if injuries are a thing, and if Aaron Jones gets hurt, you're really going to hope that you make this trade and you've got Tyreek Hill and AJ Dillon, but you're banking on an Aaron Jones injury for this trade to pay off, because if that doesn't happen, you're going to have Dillon where you might start him a flex every now and then. Some weeks he'll pay off, some weeks he'll burn you. Tyreek Hill, is probably going to outscore Dalvin Cook, but with that positional scarcity at running back, I think Dalvin Cook is the guy that you want to have in this situation. Got another question here from Mark Daniel. Are any of these receivers worth dropping for the upside of Bryan Edwards, Chris Godwin, Jamar Chase, Curtis Samuel, I assume, Brandon Cooks, Terrace Marshall? Let's just scrap the first three. We're not dropping Chris Godwin, Jamar Chase, or Curtis Samuel, or Deebo Samuel, for that matter. We're not dropping any of those guys for Bryan
We're not
Edwards.
dropping anybody. Let's be.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not dropping anybody here.
Mark, honey, no.
Take
it with the Bryan Edwards to the moon. Bryan Edwards is not going to the moon. He might not even go to Wendy's. We don't know, okay? We will not drop any of these players for Bryan Edwards. I wish you all the best, Mr. Edwards and Derek Carr, the connection. Maybe it'll be there, but Darren Waller, tight end for the Oakland Raiders. Oh my gosh, not the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders is the guy. Darren Waller, that's it. Out on the rest. They might hyper target. Was there a report today? They might hyper target Ruggs just to show he was a good draft pick or something. I saw that. I was like, who's writing that over at NBC Edge? I don't know, but don't drop these guys. Long answer.
Yeah. I think Bryan Edwards is like best case scenario is being the third target on this team, and more realistically, he's going to end up being the fourth or fifth target on this team. So
a bad team, a team that has no offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think the upside is similar between Terrace Marshall and Bryan Edwards. I mean, if Bryan Edwards, if he really hits his ceiling, he can do it. But no, I'm not dropping any of these guys for Bryan Edwards. I'd keep it as is, Mark. All right, we got a question here from Philip820, and he's saying, trying to decide between draft position. He is in a 12-person half PPR, and should he get a top 4 spot, or should he take one of the back end spots at 1 to 12?
That's tough. I think I'd either go top 1 or 2, maybe 3 to get one of CMC, Cook, or Kamara, and other than that, I'd wait till the end of the rounds. Like you said, try to get on that turn. You can get a premium tight end and a good running back. You could get Eckler and Antonio Gibson at the turn if you so choose. I think you could go RB there. So I'd just I'd be out of those middle rounds, one or the other.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like the top 3 picks this year. Any team where I can get Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, or Alvin Kamara with my first pick. And then when it wraps back around, sometimes you get lucky and Darren Waller drops there. Other times you take George Kittle, but those end up being my favorite teams where I have one of those top 3 picks.
Yes.
So yeah, I would definitely take that. And even if you have the 4th pick, I think Devontae Adams is probably who you're going at 4. And if you're taking Devontae Adams at 4, you could still get, a Clyde Edwards-Helaire or something like that in the second round. So I think taking a top 4 pick is the way to go this year. Zachary Sandecki is asking, my home league is low scoring and very touchdown dependent. So I'm guessing there isn't decimal scoring in here. That would be my assumption. And he says, I need to pick 3 keepers. They count as rounds 1, 2, and 3. Saquon Barkley, Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, J.K. Dobbins. Who are the 3 you are picking out of that bunch?
If you have to do it, because this says they count as rounds 1, 2, and 3. That stinks. But if you have to, I'm taking.
So I'm in a league like this, and I assume they're like mandatory keepers where you have to keep X amount of players. And then what it is like your first couple rounds, they take those. And then the draft will start in round 4 with the 36 keepers out of the pool.
Gotcha. That's very interesting.
Yes, this is how ESPN does keepers. That's how I know.
Gross. Well, why don't you take the floor on this one then, Dave? You're much more familiar than I am.
I mean, for this, I've been in these types of leagues for a long time, and it's really simple for me. I just go through the rankings, and I pick the top 3 guys in the rankings. And if you look at any rankings right here, it's going to be Saquon Barkley, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley. Those are the 3 guys that you keep. I don't think you got to overthink this one. You can get all of these guys probably, once the actual draft starts and you are through the keepers. So yeah, Saquon Barkley, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley for me. Final question, and then we will go to the chat and answer some of the questions that I've seen pop up in there. And we've got T Cook NFL on Twitter asking us, Kenyon Drake or Jamal Williams drafting as a late round running back for a pinch, or are you fading these guys entirely? Who do you think has the better season / gets more usage? Who are you taking here, Kenyon Drake or Jamal Williams?
Ugh, gross. Jamal, easily. I think we'll keep this answer short. One thing I wanted to point out is that the Lions are being very quiet about DeAndre Swift's groin injury. Okay, this happened a couple weeks ago. I haven't really seen any updates unless I missed something. Dave, I don't know if you want to correct me there, but they're being particularly quiet about this. And a groin injury has certain, I'm not a PT or anything, but it has certain stages where it's worse or it's just not really concerned. So if he's still not practicing, not on the field for this next preseason game, I'm going to start getting worried, and I'm going to be taking a lot more Jamal Williams in my drafts.
Yeah, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about how all the Detroit Lions have done over the last decade is mismanaged running back injuries, and I've been saying this about DeAndre Swift. I'm not going to say any of that today, but we'll stick to the question at hand, which is Kenyon Drake or Jamal Williams, and I'm going to go with Kenyon Drake. I just think that his pass catching upside is something that is a little bit enticing, and I just think that if you're looking at pure ceiling here, I think that even if something were to happen to DeAndre Swift, they'd find somebody else to take a role, and there'd still be a committee where I think if something happens to Josh Jacobs, there's nobody else that really worries me too much. I could see Kenyon Drake taking on that full workhorse role. We talk about it late in the draft, and you're looking at guys like this, you're looking at the upside. And I think that Kenyon Drake has a little bit more upside than Jamal Williams, but really, these aren't 2 guys that I'm really interested in drafting in any leagues. But Victoria, I am going to start trying to work my way through this chat and see what questions we got in here. Why don't you let everybody know a little bit about our partner?
Absolutely. So are you tired of the same old fantasy contest and you think you got what it takes to flex on the competition and win this season's hottest fantasy football contest? Well, $100 can't get you as much as it used to in fantasy football, am I right? But what if I told you for $100 you could win a grand prize of $225,000 and a VIP trip for 2 to this year's Super Bowl, as well as a ton of other weekly prizes? FanUp's Flex Frenzy season-long contest is the perfect contest for you or any fan. There are only 5,000 total entries for this contest. It only costs $100 per entry, or 3 teams for $275 for the entire season. You gotta love those chances to cash in. You simply pick your starting 7 players every week of the NFL's regular season, so that's weeks 1 through 17. Your flex player has a 1.5 times points multiplier, hence the contest title, Flex Frenzy. The contest pays out 200 entries and weekly prizes, including awesome autographed football jerseys of your favorite players and so much more from the Fanatics, Peloton, Nike, and Adidas. So signups go through Thursday, September 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern for that. You can download the app everyone is talking about, FanUp, on the App Store for Apple, and that you must be 18 or older to play. Restrictions apply per state. FanUp and just be fans.
Nailed it. This really is a fun competition. I've been looking into this. It's not just your normal, just winning money. They give out, like you said, Peloton bikes, Nike gift cards, Lululemon clothing. It's a fun app, so definitely recommend checking that out. But let's go ahead and get to the questions. Zara, I'm skipping over your first question. I'm sorry because it was a little too similar to this one, but of the two you dropped, I like this one better. Question: are you buying Noah Fant in anticipation for Aaron Rodgers in Denver next year? Just absolute disgust on your face, Victoria. What was that about? Why are you not buying Noah Fant?
No, I read this wrong. I was like, Rodgers, I thought, what? Okay, I get it. Next year.
Dynasty. We're talking about Dynasty. Yes.
Oh, goodness. I mean, I'm not. Thank you. Crushed it. Thank you so much. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could think about the upside that Robert Tonyan had last year. He hyper-targeted him in the end zone. He built that trust. I don't know if I'm going crazy going out spending offers for Noah Fant. If you can get him, though, throughout the season, if there's like this current news, if he's got some kind of injury or something like that, if you can buy that dip, I'm all in for this anticipation. But really, anything could happen next season. I mean, he could very well not be there, and there could be a brand new rookie quarterback there. Who knows? But he's a talented kid, so I don't see a reason you shouldn't buy him.
So I will just say that I will be shocked if Aaron Rodgers isn't playing in Denver next year. I mean, he's already talked to the team, and they have discussed that they are going to help him go to wherever he wants next year. I mean, everybody said it for the longest time. Like, this Denver team is just a quarterback away from being a great team. We know that's where Aaron Rodgers wants to go. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and Aaron Rodgers was just out in Greeley, which is about 40 minutes away from here, and just bought a house a few months ago that kind of slipped underneath the radar. So he has his second home now in Colorado.
Did you see him out there with his little bun?
I did not, but my uncle did. My uncle saw him at a hat store in downtown Greeley. And funny enough, my uncle actually lives in Green Bay and then moved to Greeley. And now Aaron Rodgers is moving to Greeley. So, he's just, Aaron Rodgers is obsessed with my uncle. What can I say? but I think that he will be there next year. And I think that in dynasty leagues, you should be acquiring all of the pass catchers that you can. I mean, we saw this in 2012. Peyton Manning showed up, and suddenly all of these guys that we knew had talent in Denver and couldn't get anything done, suddenly Peyton Manning showed up, and they were all incredible fantasy options. So yes, acquire as much Denver pass catching weapons as you can this year in anticipation for next year. This one is a question that is challenging a take that I made, where I said that I think Darnell Mooney is a little bit more talented than Brandon Cooks. And I do. I think that Brandon Cooks, up through this point in his career, he has been the wide receiver one on his teams with very, very talented quarterbacks. But I think when you just look at what these guys bring to the table and the skill set that they have, I think that Darnell Mooney is faster. I think he's a better route runner. He's bigger. He's stronger. So yeah, Jeff, keep trying to challenge me, buddy. I think that Darnell Mooney is better than Brandon Cooks, and I don't care what you have to say about it. What about you, Victoria?
Jeff, don't listen to him. I'm with you. Okay, that's all I have to say about it. Brandon Cooks, 1K yards every single season of his career. Let's talk about it. Well, we won't talk about it anymore, but I'm with you, Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you for challenging me that, Jeff. I need people to keep me humble every now and then and push back on these takes, so I appreciate it. We got a question here from Matthew Bingham, and he is saying, what do you make of Kyle Pitts' quiet camp / preseason? Is it good or bad that we're not hearing much about him, or is this new Arthur Smith-led team in general? And let me just preface this really quickly by saying, there was that one catch that everybody was like, there it is, Kyle Pitts. And it was a pass that got broken up that he fell and the ball just kind of fell into him. And that's all we've seen from Kyle Pitts this preseason. So what do you make of this?
I don't know. I think let's say there were a ton of hype videos of him going around. Maybe it would push him up 1 or 2 more spots in the tight end rankings, right? He's already most consensus tight end 5 or 6. I don't know. You couldn't even put him higher anyway. So I don't think that there's anything that could have came out that would have changed rankings necessarily. In terms of expectations for his potential performance on the field, I also don't care. I'm excited to see what he can do. I want to look at him not as a tight end, but as a receiver, and just think of him as the complement to Calvin Ridley in that way. And when you think of it that way, instead of, oh, tight end, he might struggle, this, and that, I think he's going to be fantastic still for the Falcons this season. That being said, his ADP costs much too high for me. I'm probably not going to have too much of him on my teams, but I'll be excited to watch him. What you do?
And I kind of feel the same way. I mean, this shouldn't be a shock. Like, oh my goodness, you're telling me a rookie tight end is struggling to get up to NFL speed? Who could have seen this coming? I mean, we see this with every single first round tight end that comes into the league. So I'm not making too much about it because I feel like this should have been somewhat anticipated. I mean, Evan Ingram is like the one tight end in the last like 20 years that has made an impact as a rookie. So Kyle Pitts really has history stacked against him. And I get it. You know, he's a unicorn. He's not your typical tight end. But, you know, I said that I would be changing my tight end or my Kyle Pitts take if I saw, you know, heavy usage in the preseason and him lighting up out wide. And we haven't seen that yet. So I am, I don't want to say I'm getting worried because I was kind of off the Kyle Pitts hype train before this happened. So I'm not making too much of it. We've got a trade here from Seth, and he is saying, I just traded Darrell Henderson and Devonta Smith for J.K. Dobbins. Let's just, you know, if we don't have the details of the league, I'm just going to assume this is a single QB, half PPR. So let's do that. Darrell Henderson and Devonta Smith for J.K. Dobbins. Who won?
Oh, I don't like it. Okay, I almost don't even want to consider Henderson in the trade. Obviously, we need to, but if it's Dynasty, right? He's probably not going to be the lead back next year. We can make that assumption. I love Devonta Smith. Okay, I love him. And if anyone's watching the preseason, again, don't want to put too much stock in it, but everybody's worried about BMI and what he got off that line, honey, like a track star. Okay, he's getting off the line, getting that separation. I don't think he's going to have any worry about getting separation or getting those targets in the Eagles offense. J.K. Dobbins is someone I'm a little lower on than consensus because of Gus Edwards. He's still here. They re-signed him. He's still there. He's still going to have a lot of utilization in that backfield. Lamar Jackson caps his upside. I love the talent of Dobbins. Do not get me wrong there. I'm just lower on him because of many, many reasons like that. I think I'd take the Smith side here, but that I'm a little biased on my love for Smith.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is such a tough question because J.K. Dobbins is like the definition of like just an incredible talent, like arguably the best running back to come out of that, you know, just loaded 2020 class. But his situation is rough, you know, with Lamar Jackson being the primary goal line back there, with Gus Edwards still expected to see, you know, 35 to 40% of the carries. I don't know how much room there's going to be for J.K. Dobbins. And he had that stretch last year where he was very fantasy relevant, but that was him scoring over a touchdown per week. And I don't know if he's going to keep that up. I mean, for J.K. Dobbins to pay off at what his current value is on the market, he basically needs to have 20 touchdowns this year, and I don't see that happening. So I'm with you. I think Devonta Smith, what we've seen from him in a very limited fashion so far in the preseason, is just a phenomenal player. I mean, this guy looks good. So I'm with you. I think Darrell Henderson is just kind of, you know, he's not anything that's really changing it for me. I'm looking at this as Devonta Smith, J.K. Dobbins, and assuming this is Dynasty, give me Devonta. We got a question from Avi here, and he is saying, would you rather stream quarterbacks or would you rather stream tight ends? This is such a great question that we have never gotten on this show. So, Victoria, off the cuff, would you rather stream quarterbacks or tight ends?
Streaming tight ends feels like the worst. You just have the worst day every single weekend when you're setting your lineup. You're like,
let's be honest. In a 12-team team or in a 12-team league, 9 people are probably streaming tight ends.
It's just so gross. And there's just so many more relevant quarterbacks. I don't know if you probably listen to the Footballguys podcast. I feel like they've been saying multiple times that, 40 different quarterbacks were in the top 12 or some kind of stat like that. There were 40 different quarterbacks that made it into the top 12 rankings at some point in the 2020 season. There's so many more quarterbacks that can hit versus a tight end. It's just so gross. I'd much rather stream quarterbacks.
And I feel like, I don't know if streaming tight ends is really a thing, because like it's really tough to play that and know when they're going to get their touchdowns and when they're. I feel like you're not really streaming tight ends, but I feel like that's something that I end up doing a lot, and I don't even mean to because I miss out on the elite tight ends, and then I'm just constantly shuffling tight ends every single week, hoping that I can find somebody that hits, and very rarely do they. So I guess I'd say I'd rather stream tight ends because I do like having that security of an elite quarterback. I really want to make sure, I say it all the time, but I want one of those top 5 guys. So I feel like after Dak, there's a pretty big fall off. And yeah, you've made a case for Ryan Tannehill, and we both really like Jalen Hurts. And, those are guys in multiple quarterback leagues where I love getting them as my QB2. But in a single quarterback league, I really, really, really want to get one of those top 5 guys. So streaming quarterbacks, I get that there's a lot of data behind it, and it's the preferred way to go for the analytics crowd. But for me, it makes me a little nervous. I like having the just security of a top guy.
You don't want to stream Daniel Jones? What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I don't want to be just like fishing on the waiver wire, like Ben Roethlisberger, Daniel Jones, or Sam Darnold this week. No, I just want Lamar Jackson to be locked in there, and then I want his one bye week. I'll figure it out. But I don't want to be streaming quarterbacks every single week. That being said, if that is the route you go, I feel like I should plug Chris Allen, who is on the Football Guys staff, and he does a weekly article about quarterback streaming. And it's worth the read. But before we sign off, I just want to mention that if you are into shows like this, you're probably a pretty serious fantasy football player, and you need to get a Football Guys Premium membership if you don't already, whether you're playing Redraft, Dynasty, DFS, or anything else. We have got you covered. So go to footballguys.com and click on the orange button in the top right corner to sign up so we can do the work and you can do the winning. Thank you for tuning in to Football Guys' newest show, the Mailbag Show, with normally myself, Troy, and Victoria, but just Victoria and I today, and I think we held down the fort all right. You can find us every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to subscribe to the Football Guys YouTube page at youtube.com/Football Guys TV, where you can find the rest of the Football Guys shows there as well. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, y'all.